Welcome to the start of our journey into AP Statistics. Today, we are diving into topic 1.1, where we answer a fundamental question: what can we learn from data? By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the key components within a statistical study, like populations and samples, and you will be able to determine what makes a good investigative question. At its heart, statistics is the science of learning from data. But why do we need it? Let's start with the big picture. Imagine you want to know the average height of every teenager in the entire world. Could you actually go out and measure every single one of them? Probably not. There are millions of teenagers, and by the time you finished, some wouldn't be teenagers anymore. This is where statistics comes in. A statistical study is a process of collecting data from a sample to answer a question about a larger population. A statistical study allows us to look at a smaller group to make an educated guess about a much larger group. We do this because populations are often too large or too difficult to measure entirely. Notice these symbols. We use a capital N to represent the size of the whole population, and a lowercase n for the size of our sample. You'll see these letters throughout the entire course, so keep them in mind. To understand how these studies work, we need to define our terms clearly. First, we have the population. This consists of all items or individuals of interest in a specific study. If we are studying the battery life of a specific smartphone model, the population is every single one of those phones ever produced. Since we can't test every phone, we select a sample. This is a subset of the population from which we actually collect data. If we test 100 phones, our sample size, lowercase n, is 100. From each phone in that sample, we get a datum. That is the singular version of data. It's a single piece of information, like, this phone lasted 12 hours. When we collect all those individual pieces of information together, we have a data set. One of the most important habits you can build in AP statistics is using context. Statistics is never just about the numbers. It is about what those numbers mean in the real world. Consider this example study. A researcher surveys 500 registered voters in Florida to see who they support for governor. In this example, if we say the population is everyone, we are being too vague. The population is specifically all registered voters in Florida. The sample consists of the 500 specific individuals who were actually contacted. Identifying these components in context means using the specific nouns and descriptions from the problem. If you just write the people on the AP exam, you might not get full credit. You must specify which people. Take a second to think. If we were studying the average weight of all golden retrievers in the United States, what would the population and a possible sample be? The population would be all golden retrievers in the United States, and a sample might be 100 golden retrievers chosen from various animal shelters. Now that we know who we are studying, we need to know what we are asking. This brings us to the investigative question. Every statistical study starts with a question. However, not just any question will do. In statistics, a good investigative question must have a defined purpose. This is a common mistake. You cannot collect data, look at the results, and then change your question to match what you found. That is biased. You must decide what you are looking for before you start. Rule number 2 is feasibility. The question must allow for data collection and analysis. If I ask, what is the favorite food of every alien in the universe? That is not a statistical investigative question because I cannot collect that data. Let us look at an example of a good question. Is there a difference in the average test scores between students who listen to music while studying and those who do not? This question is clear, has a defined purpose, and we can actually collect data from a sample of students to answer it. When you are writing your own questions, run them through this checklist. Is it clear? Is it specific? And can we measure it? If you cannot identify exactly who the population is or what data you need to collect, your question needs more work. Let's wrap up our introduction to statistics by reviewing what we have covered. First, we can now identify the components of a statistical study, and second, we can determine a valid investigative question. We've learned that we use a sample, represented by lowercase n, to make inferences about a larger population, represented by capital N. This is necessary because measuring every individual in a population is often impossible. Let's review our key terms. The population, capital N, is the whole group. The sample, lowercase n, is the subset we measure. A datum is a single data point. And the investigative question is our fixed, purposeful starting point. Remember, the most important part of statistics is the context. Always relate your numbers back to the real-world situation you are studying. In our next lesson, we will begin looking at the different types of data we can collect from these samples. Great job getting started on your AP statistics journey.